All right, so we're live back for a new series, which is this one's the performance mindset. Fitter body, stronger mind. This is the performance mindset, and we've got Dorien Van Deynse here with us, sports psychologist who's been doing some really interesting stuff with athletes in Belgium. So we've got loads of cool stuff to cover, including sort of motivation, how useful sports psychology is. It's a bit of potentially a kind of still a taboo subject nowadays, even with all the studies and things that have gone on, and various other things. So would you like to introduce yourself, Dorien, and just give us a little quick summary of your background and what you're doing?
Sure. Okay, so I'm a psychologist. I studied for a master's degree psychology at the university in Brussels, and now I'm ending my a course, sport psychology, because in Belgium every psychologist may call himself a sport psychologist, but I think when you have a little bit of background, you have more tools to really work in the sport, because athletes and everything, it's still different. It's a lot more different than we think with people who don't do sport, or when we work with athletes. So I think that's the most important background of myself. So at last year I worked with basketball players that play basketball at the highest level here in Belgium. So I was really grateful that I was able to do that. It gave me a lot of information also to work as a sport psychologist in the future. So
yeah, that's awesome. And that's a really great opportunity for you. And that's top division guys, isn't it, that you're working with?
True. It was like I did actually two work. So I worked with the guys at the highest division in Belgium basketball, but also with a team that was a little bit younger, like 16 years old, because we had to do something with youth also for my internship.
Right, I've got you. Yeah, that's really important. You're talking about, having those very specific skill sets, because, probably a lot of people don't realize that you can, what you just said, that in places you can call yourself a sports psychologist if you've, studied psychology, kind of more, not generic. I know you've studied clinical psychology, haven't you? But, even that being specific, that's not specific to sport. And this is the case with a lot of professions inside the health industry. Lots of people call themselves nutritionists who haven't really done any really in specific nutritional training and this kind of thing. So that's when you told me that, I was really happy to hear that you'd gone out of your way to go and study specifically sports psychology, and now you've got this amazing opportunity with what's the name of the team?
𝐀𝐜𝐜𝐬𝐬𝐡.
Okay. I think I forgot that a second you said it.
Of course, it's not the easiest name. It's not it's not the best team at that level, but they did really well this year. And I think I will stay like a big fan of the team.
Yeah, because you are a basketball player anyway, aren't you?
True. I play basketball myself for many years now, and I'm still not able to quit.
Just keeps bringing you back in every time. Oh, that's brilliant. It sounds like you're quite lucky to have managed. Well, not lucky, but it's very fortunate to have found that opportunity as well, because not all of the teams out there, not all sports teams in general have sports psychology opportunities, do they?
True. I think where football or soccer, depends how you call it, it's already a bit more known. Sports psychologists, they use it more often already. In basketball, it's not that popular, or they don't use them that much. I know the national Belgium team, they use a sports psychologist, but at the other levels, it's not that often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's a super interesting subject, if for no other reason than, when people look at sports teams playing, whether that's live or on the telly or whatever, you understand as spectators the effort that's gone into the physical part of that, and most people have a pretty good idea about how important the nutritional aspects are. But without having that kind of inside knowledge, none of us really know the extent that psychology is playing towards that performance. It's not obvious when it's on the pitch. It's not something that you can kind of see with your eyes and understand the direct kind of translation between whatever's been coached in that area to what's happening on the field. And I think probably the only, or one of the few examples I can think where it has been quite obvious to the spectators would be Jonny Wilkinson. I don't know if you follow English rugby at all, but Jonny Wilkinson was Jonny Wilkinson was a bit of a legend. Not just a bit of a legend; he was a massive legend, actually. Who was at the time he was the most successful kicker in English rugby. And he used to, one of his characteristics was that he would clasp his hands together before he was going to take the kick and kind of do this funny movement, but the same thing every time, very well rehearsed, and then he would take his kick. And I mean, I don't know if everybody actually knows that that's related to sports psychology, but that was kind of one opportunity for us that knew that to see how that was actually playing out in real time within the sport, which was quite cool. But I mean, generally speaking, it's not obvious, is it? We don't really see it.
No, true. I think that's the most difficult part of sports psychology, because you don't see it, and quite often when you want to be a top athlete and you want to perform at a really high level, you have already a little bit of tools that got you to the point you are at that moment.
Right.
And that's a bit, quite often already a little bit of difference between top athletes and athletes, because when you want to come to the top, to be one of the best, you have to perform well, but also your mindset has to be at a good place. And quite often during their hard work to become that top athlete, they already found some tools by themselves sometimes. That's something I realized when I was talking to the basketball players this year. A lot of basketball players are using tools that sports psychologists sometimes give to athletes, and they found them themselves, sometimes by help of a sports psychologist, some of them by talking with other people, and some of them just by trying, and then they find the tools by themselves.
Yeah, just trial and error, and that's the thing, isn't it? Because athletes obviously have that innate motivation to whatever it is they're doing. They're that fortunate band of people that have not just found a sport that they really like, but that they're really good at. If they've managed to get to the top level, then it's almost 99% sure that they have some kind of natural talent for that. And then obviously motivation becomes very, very easy when you enjoy what you're doing anyway and you're really good at it. And then if they are elite level, then they're obviously very competitive, and that competitive nature drives them to look for what I call those 1%, the things that aren't just the obvious things like training and nutrition, but the things that can make those 1% improvements, like little mindset tricks and strategies. So it's funny you say that. I get a lot of sort of different backgrounds for my clients, and every now and then when I get somebody who is an athlete or who's kind of ex-military and has that kind of natural inclination to be quite motivated anyway, I have to think a little bit harder about what kind of mindset strategies to give them, because like you were talking about, they already kind of have a large part of that squared away, ready to go. So that kind of brings us on nicely to a question that that I wanted to ask you anyway, which is sort of how useful is sports psychology in sports performance? Because, like we just mentioned, not all teams have sports psychologists on the training team, on the staff team, and I mean that's kind of surprising to me, given how much research is out there now on the benefits of this kind of thing. But then I guess it comes down to budget and other factors. So what's your kind of view on that? Like, how much influence do you think the sports psychology aspect has on the performance in the end?
I study sports psychology, so I think it's not a wonder that I think it's really important, the mindset and everything. I know it's quite often still a bit of a taboo to use or to go to a sports psychologist. And I think because most people think, yeah, when you go to a sports psychologist, something is going wrong. So I'm not doing well, or something in my performance is not going well. So I have to go to a sports psychologist. But it's not always like that. It doesn't have to be always like that, because sometimes you're performing well, it's going well, but you have the feeling that if you can have a little more focus, or a little more, a little less stress or something like that, you can perform even better. So it's not always going bad, so I have to go to a sports psychologist. And I think that's the mindset still a lot of people have, and that's why it's still a little bit of taboo to go to a sports psychologist. So that's one thing I think it's important for people to know. It's not always when everything is going bad. Sometimes it's just because you want to get even better than you already are, to see maybe there's even something more I can do. So that's one aspect. I think that explains also a bit, like, okay, you can go when something is wrong, like you can't handle the pressure anymore. That's a little topic why you can go to a sports psychologist, or you have the feeling that maybe you can get even better at handling stress. Focus, goal setting are things that we do also. Other topics are also when we are in revalidation, when we were injured or something like that, and we have to come back to the court. How do we handle the injury? Some people have traumas. Also, their sports psychologist can help. It's like, I think quite often on so many topics, sports psychology can help. It's not the only thing. It's always in combination with sport, with food and everything. It's a combination that makes you the best athletes that there is at that moment.
Yeah, I think that's a really important way of looking at it. Is, just because something's not obviously broken doesn't mean that you can't be enhanced, and that's the difference, isn't it? It's not to say that anything specifically is going wrong. I think can be sort of labeled to psychology across the board, and I think it's one of the reasons why I don't know what the term would be in Belgium, but we used to call self-development books self-help books. They don't really call it self-help, because self-help is like, something's wrong with me, I need something fixing. And self-development is more this idea that no matter where you're at, you can still improve, you can still do things better. And do you feel like that mentality is kind of catching up with the science? Do you feel like that view is gradually starting to mature as kind of more evidence comes out about the usefulness of sports psychology amongst players, I mean?
Yeah, I think so, because when I talk to athletes or other, some of them still have a bit of feeling like, you have to be a pro to go to a psychologist. But you see a lot of people are like, maybe it's not always like that, and you can go. And especially when I look to basketball, because the national team of the women in Belgium, they have a sport psychologist. I think things like that can help to show others that sport psychology is really interesting and can really be useful for people to to go to, or to ask them for some advice. And I think it's like the top teams that maybe are the best placed for using sports psychology, so they can show others it's not a taboo. It's not wrong to use a sports psychologist to get even better. So, but changing, but it's just like psychology did. The regular psychology, it was also a lot of taboo, and that changed already a lot. It's still a little bit, but I think every year it's getting better. And I think it's the same for psychology. It takes time for people to change of thought about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the whole process takes a lot of time, doesn't it? It takes a lot of time for the science to come out. We start out with these sort of anecdotal research, and then it turns into clinical clinical studies or controlled studies, and then eventually that's still not really enough proof. Everybody still wants the assurance from the testimonials and the player case studies, and I think you've hit the nail on the head really. Once you've got enough high profile players sort of coming out and talking about how much it's benefited them, then it will become sort of unquestionable really whether it's useful or not, or how much benefit it could have. But yeah, it's really interesting. So what kind of areas generally do you find you're covering the most with your players?
At the moment, it was especially like dealing with stress. That's a quite often question, because I think it's not that awkward to have stress in important moments of the game. So I think that's why it's easy to ask that question to a sports psychologist. So the most big topic that I get questions about. So they don't ask me directly, but when I talk to people, quite often I notice that they handle wrong the people that were injured and are coming back to their sport.
Okay.
They're handling it wrong with their mindset. It's like, okay, physically okay now, so everything it's okay. You can go back to your sport. You can back perform. Physically, there's no problem anymore. But the problem is that quite a lot of people think, okay, tomorrow I can do my sport again. That they think, okay, I'm still at the same level that I was before I got injured. And their goal setting and their goals and everything, they're just too high for directly to perform at the highest. And I think that that's not a good way to handle those things. And you notice that a lot of people around the person are also saying, while they're injured, but when you come back, everything will be fine and you will still be able to perform. Know that, because when you say that, quite often people think, okay, I will be there when I got back of my injury, and then they are there, they're not performing the way they want. And then I see a lot of people that stops playing. Oh, I think I've fallen away.
Sorry.
Do you hear me again?
I've got you back. Yeah, there was about 10 seconds where I just had nothing.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
And I think that's a question they don't ask quite a lot at the moment now, but I'm pushing it a bit through myself.
Okay, interesting.
So
that's really interesting. So you're saying that a big problem is athletes going away and during the recovery phase, obviously getting themselves better, but then not adjusting the mindset about what's waiting them when they come back. I kind of get that, because I've had a few guys come to me who are ex-military, and they still kind of base their level of performance on whatever they were doing. Yeah, it's quite often the case that the last time they kind of really tested their performance was when they were in the military, and they've got this memory of like their best run times and how strong they were and stuff, and then they're kind of hoping to sort of jump straight back in there, or they can't quite believe the gap that's formed between where they are now and where they were, and there is a bit of kind of mindset massage there, sort of letting them understand that this is going to take very long to get back there, but it's not going to happen overnight, kind of thing. So what are the kind of techniques that you try to implement with your players to help get around those issues when they're coming back to playing after spending some time out?
I think the most important thing is to set some realistic goals, because when you're realistic, it's easier to keep on yourself motivated, because without motivation you don't get anywhere. And if you have the wrong goals for you and you are not able to perform to your goals, and it's more difficult to keep on trying to get there. So I think the most important thing is first being realistic, telling your athletes that it will be difficult and they will have to work to get to that point again. That's the first thing, just the realistic goal setting. And then even better to use is also then little goals, not putting immediately that goal. Okay, it can be a long-term goal, like, okay, in a few months I want to be able to get there again, but in the meanwhile you're setting little goals that are still, you have to work for them, but it's easier to get them in short term. And if you are able to get to your goals you're setting, you will get motivated and keep working easier. It will be easier to keep on going.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a big area for me. A lot of the guys that come to me are really kind of looking for tool sets to help them. Not so much to get motivation. Usually people have that initial motivation, but then it's keeping that motivation once they've been on the journey for a little while. And that's a big thing, is that for some people, the goals that they really want are so far away, it's very difficult to stay on track on that journey unless you have a system in place of breaking down those goals into those smaller bite-sized goals, so that they've got these things to keep ticking away as they go, little milestones to chip away. Then that makes it easier for a bit of reflection as well, to look back on what they've already achieved, rather than always keeping the eyes forwards on what they haven't achieved yet. So I can see how that would. So this is nice. So this can go into something that's very relatable to some of the people at home that are potentially going to watch this as well, and what they might be able to do to help keep themselves motivated. So do you have a particular system of goal setting that you use with the athletes, or is it less structured than that? Is it just kind of specific to them? Oh, I mean, obviously it's specific to them, but do you have like a goal setting system? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, okay, I can hear you. Yeah. So for goal settings and keep on motivated, I think, the structure and the little goals in between are one of the most important things, I think. But another aspect is also that it has to be a goal that you can control yourself. Quite often, we have some athletes that go to a game or a race or something like that, and they say, okay, I want to win, or my goal is to end up first. But that's not a goal that you can control yourself, because you're not able to control the other runners or the other athletes at the court. So that's not a controllable goal. The controllable goal is perhaps, yeah, running a second faster than I did last time, or yeah, making sure that no one can steal that ball out of my hands, for example. So controllable goals are very important, because a lot of people just say, yeah, I want to end up first, I want to be the best. Okay, I can understand that, especially when you're an athlete and we want to perform well and we want to see that in results. But it's not a result that only we are controlling. So that's a mistake I see quite often, and I think it's really important to handle with those.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, and that's a good way of looking at it. You know, sometimes what you want to achieve is actually a byproduct of the system that you've got in place to get there, or just working on improving other metrics. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I go into so much detail, about improving factors across the board, like not just doing exercise and eating the right things, but looking at improving sleep and things you can do to improve mood and all of these kinds of things, because they all contribute to that end result, and then those goals that you're talking about, the things that aren't quite manageable, like, wanting to have lots of energy every day. Yeah, that's not something you can control. Some days you just won't, but if you work on sleeping better every night, putting into place a system of sleeping better every night, then you will sleep better, then your mood probably will improve, and then that kind of unmanageable goal becomes a byproduct of that system. Okay, awesome. So we talked a little bit about motivation there. Are there any other specific strategies that you would use for motivation on its own right?
When athletes would come to us and they have a motivational problem, quite often they don't know it at the beginning already. So when we talk to them, we try to look, why do you come to us? Why do you come to a sport psychologist? Why are you doing still the sport that you do? Why do you love it and everything? And then, yeah, it's something we do, like a little bit research about their motivation, because when you have totally no motivation anymore for yourself, like intrinsic motivation, then it's difficult to keep on going. And sometimes it's even that sport psychologists have to help them with, okay, actually you may not want to do that sport anymore, and we have to search for a goal not related to sport. So, but that's
Right.
a little one thing. Sometimes that can happen, but sometimes it's also like you have to try to find the love of the game again. Some people lose it, for example, by they change their motivation from intrinsic to extrinsic to perform for someone else. So they don't do it anymore for themselves, and it can help to do it again for yourself. Why do you want to do the sport? Is it because you want to please your coach, or is it to please yourself, to do something you love, to get some energy out, for example? So I think sometimes we have to search, where are your motivations at this moment? Because that makes a lot of difference. If it's external, it's quite often that they don't get where they want to be, because at the moment the coach isn't there, or there's something wrong, or they change from coach, and that motivation is gone. And then what do we have to do now? And when they search back to their internal motivation, why am I doing this from the beginning, it will be easier to get your motivation back on track and to keep on going. Was it because I love it? Okay, I have to find the love of the game again. If it's something else, okay, maybe we can set some goals to get there again.
Yeah.
I hope I did it better well.
No, yeah, it makes total sense. That's really interesting. Yeah, because I think everybody assumes that athletes, particularly, especially if you manage to get to the level that your guys are, where they're, professional professional players, that they're just doing what they love every single day. But, that's not necessarily the case, probably especially when it's transitioned from a hobby to your job, then it's probably even easier for that kind of love for the game to start slipping away and being replaced by just the pressure of having to achieve well every week. Because they're doing it every single week, aren't they? I mean, how many times a week are your guys practicing, and how many times a month are they playing?
That team, I think they had practice like almost every day, but it's not from Monday till Friday, but it's not that they do the same practice every time. So sometimes it's just more, like shooting or stuff like that. Sometimes it's really like we're with the whole team playing little games amongst each other. And sometimes it's more that the coach gives some instructions with videos and everything, so they get prepared for the game that's coming up. So the games are like, at some moments it's like every week that they have a game, and then there are some moments that they have no game for 3 weeks or something. So it's really difficult for them sometimes when they have a break of 3 weeks with games to keep on going, I think. But that's why the coach also tries to do sometimes like games against other countries or something, like the Netherlands, just a friendship game, but like that they keep on going, and they still have some goals to we can try this tactic in that game, and maybe we can use it in the game of our competition.
Yeah,
but
so
they do sport like basically almost every, I think. So and that's why, like you said, quite often
sorry, the connection was slightly
quite often it comes from internal motivation to perform for their manager or for their coach, because do you hear me again? Okay.
I think there's just a little bit of a delay. So
quite often they at the moment they come to perform for their coach, for their manager, because for them it's their job. They have to perform, because otherwise they may be cut out of the team. And being the team means I get my money. So, it's quite they don't want to lose their job either. So they have to perform. And that's, I think, sometimes the difficulty between keep the motivation that why you started at the beginning, like the love for the game and everything, and next to it you have the motivation that performing for the coach, so he's happy, so he keeps you in the team, that if maybe better teams come scouting you and everything like that.
And how much time do you actually have to deal with them on these kinds of topics? Because obviously it's not, it's not very simple practices to outline, is it? Everything is very, very specific to the individual, and it's not something that you're probably going to be able to kind of prescribe something for and fix during one consultation. So how much time do you how much opportunity do you have to get personal with the players and talk about this stuff and work with them on it?
It depends a lot of every single person, because also I worked with a team, but still I didn't talk with every player. But the players that are like, okay, I want to tell you something, but I don't need it, I'm not going to give pressure to come to me every week or something. So if they have no questions for me, I'm not going to say, you have to work with me. It's like, I'm here if you need me, and you can ask me some questions at the moment you have them. And then you have other players that say, okay, I have a little question about this of this, and then we talk with each other. And then it depends also, like some topics you have to talk about like every week or every once on the 2 weeks. And other topics talk with them and then rest a little bit and I'm still available for questions alone for a whole month. I'm there. And
it just went a little bit crackly for me on
that they are not
what it's like for everyone else. I'm just, it's caught up now. Yes, I caught most of that, I think. So you get some pretty regular time, but sometimes it can be kind of a couple of weeks between sessions with players, huh?
True, and I quite often it's about the questions they have. So if it's if they have really a question that is like important for them to handle with, and they are really like, I want to get better at it, and it's really keeping me slower or keeping me a little bit back, then you will follow up quite faster than when it's okay, but they want to work on it.
Yeah, so it's kind of a matter of urgency and sort of importance as to how much time you get with each person, I suppose, and how regular it is. Okay, cool. So, I mean, that's quite interesting. I found with some of the guys that have worked with me that sometimes if they're on sort of longer journeys or in any case, sometimes even just over a short period of time, it becomes apparent that they become very hung up about the goals that they had at the start, but that those goals actually aren't really in line with what they really want to get out of it anymore. But because that's the goal at the beginning, they've got very focused on it. And now we've got this kind of system in place to try and achieve that goal. It's not actually bringing any positive impact into their lives in the way that they hoped. Now, one example is, I've had people come to me that have been quite driven to improve their running. And then it's kind of gone into winter and they've been really hammering themselves hard to try and get out of the door to run when the weather's not very good and it's cold. And eventually we've kind of got to this point where it's like, okay, you realize that you're just not enjoying this. Is there another goal that we can work towards here? And as soon as they've switched to something else, like going to a sports club or starting classes at the gym, it's turned the whole thing on its head. And now they're really enjoying it again. Now they've got new goals to work towards. And it can be, I don't know if you find this with your players, but sometimes it's very easy to get really hung up on a goal that's not actually bringing you what you want. Have you found that?
Yeah, I know what you want to say, because I think it happens more than people realize, that at a little bit of time the goals are actually different, but they still think they have the same goal. So it's good that you say like to them, I don't think this is what we have to do, and maybe look for something else. Goal changing can be very useful and helpful. So we don't have to stick always at the same goal. It's not that we have to change them every week. And then I would say, okay, maybe we should try to keep a goal for a little bit longer. But after, if you really notice that, we don't get there, it can happen also when they come to us individually. The first talk we have with an athlete when it comes to sport psychology, it's like, okay, we're looking for your goals, your motivations, and all those stuff. So we're looking for it, and we set some goals, and we write another. We have to keep the goal, or is it the wrong goal that we're setting in front of us? So it's something we have to keep dealing with. Is it the right goal that we set up in front to get to? So quite often athletes, when they go to a sports psychologist, they don't get the right goal immediately. Sometimes we need time to get to, okay, what's really your goal to go to?
Yeah, I totally understand. Yeah. Yeah, that's quite often the same with clients who come to me as well. You know, I say, well, sometimes they don't even really have specific goals to start off with. They only know that they want to improve their fitness, and I kind of know that it's not going to be enough to keep them motivated over time. So it takes a few weeks of sort of adopting the routine and trying out some workouts and stuff, and then they'll come back to me and say, right, okay, I know, you know, I'm actually really enjoying the running more than I thought, and I've always kind of secretly thought I might try like an obstacle race, like a Spartan race or something. That's actually an example of someone that's been working with me recently, and now they've got that goal, you know. But for the first few weeks, the goals are kind of a bit mundane. Sort of, yeah, I just want to improve my fitness. I kind of go through this process when people start with me of making sure that they question why they want their goals. You know, I won't accept just these are my goals. I want to know what the reasons are, and I ask things like, you know, what is the positive impact on your life if you achieve that goal? What's the negative impact on your life if you stay the same? You know, because for me, the desires are just one side, but the actual drivers fueling that desire are just as important, especially for long-term motivation. And you know, I'll use that information that I get from them to work on you know, various practices as we go, like visualizations and things like that. So sort of staying on motivation for a little bit. Are there any kind of specific practices that you kind of generally prescribe to the players to help them with that side of things, or what kind of strategies specifically have you kind of put in place for people dealing with that problem?
Oh, there was a little bit delay, so I didn't get the question.
Okay, I was saying, what kind of strategies do you specifically put in place? I don't know if you've got some examples of things that you've prescribed to players who, as you were talking about earlier, maybe they've fallen out of love with the game, or they, you know, not realizing, not really driven towards the goals that they had at the start anymore. Are there any practices and strategies that you generally prescribe to people for those sorts?
I think for me, it's like quite often also talk with each other, like, okay, and when they talk to me, it's difficult to explain, but sometimes when they say something, as a sports psychologist, you hear some words and you pick in on them. You're saying, okay, there you said that. Why did you say that? And so we try to go really deep in the conversation to get to the meaning of everything. So I think that's just something, the background of psychologists that we do, and it's a bit important to go to the meaning and to the real center of the talk and everything. So, and that's one way I try to get, okay, what are we going to do? What do we want to go? Where do we want to go? And then if you really don't get out of a conversation, I would say, do you still love to, for example, play basketball on the court when you don't have a practice? Do you like to do it with a friend, just going on the court, shooting the ball? Or don't you love it anymore? So that's also a little bit, would you be able to still do it aside the performance and the club and everything? So I think that's one way to find out if you're still in love with the game. So, and if they're still in love, but there's something that holds them back for performing or something in team or something else, then we can look for, okay, what's making you that you don't love it in the team or in the how do I say it, when you have to do it. So then we for that. So it's not really that I have some tools for someone to do them by themselves. I would say if you question your motivation and everything, try to think about it yourself. Why are you still doing what you're doing? And what's the reason behind it? Do you still love to play the sport you're doing, or don't you like to do it anymore? Because if there's totally no love for it anymore, I think it's difficult to keep on going. If you have totally no love for the sport that you did like for 10 years, for example, it can be that it vanished. It's yeah, that you have the feeling like it's enough for me.
Yeah, I love that. Just exploring what you would do if nothing else mattered, if achieving the goal didn't matter, if everyone else was blind to the outcomes, would you still just do it anyway? There's a quote I always remember from the climbing documentary, The Dawn Wall, which is about this guy, Tommy Caldwell, who climbs a really impressive face in Yosemite Valley. And I was listening to an interview with him about it afterwards, and he was saying that when they were planning it, they knew it was going to be this ridiculous, epic adventure that was going to take forever, and they ended up, having to live on the wall, on this rock face for, I think it was like nearly 3 weeks. Or maybe even longer. I can't remember the specifics now, but it was ages, and they're just eating kind of tins of beans and things on this wall. And in this interview, he said when they were asking themselves, are we really going to do this? We might not even achieve it. No one's ever done it before. He said, in the end, he decided that he would go for it, because even if they failed to do it, it would have been worthwhile. And that was just like that pure love for the sport and that passion for just going up there and just having a go. And even if they didn't achieve the goal that they set out, it still would have been an awesome adventure. And that's how I kind of break it down when I'm trying to get to the bottom of why a client is not motivated to do their workouts anymore. I quite often say to them, next week, forget about the goals that we've spoken about and what it is you think you're trying to work towards. What would you just do next week for fun if you could just do anything? And then that invariably, that answer is what they need to do, because then at least you get the consistency.
And I think also with sports, it's quite often like, when I was little, I played basketball already, but I also swam. So it was 2 sports that I was doing at that time.
Yeah.
And then with studies and everything, I wasn't able to combine them, and I had to make a choice. And for me, it was like, at that moment, I loved both of them. I still believe that, but with swimming, my friends, they were also the people who I was, racing against, because when they are your age, at the end, both of you are racing that race just to have that golden medal, for example. So, and with basketball, my teammates, I play with them on the court, and for me, that was another way to play sports. And I think that was also a reason why I chose basketball. I still love it, basketball. I love to do it, but I'm also someone who loves to do a sport with other people. I'm not someone who likes to do sports on our own. So, that's something I think when you have goals, and even when you're not an athlete, but you do want to do some workout, you have to think about, okay, what works for me? Does it work for me to go running by myself every day? Or does it work for me to do it with someone else? What works best? If it's like doing it with someone else, okay, then do it that way. It helps you to keep being motivated to do it every day, because that moment, you're obligated because you promised to the other person that you will be there, and you love the moment you're doing it, then it's easier to keep on doing it every week. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm so happy that you said that. It's a really, really interesting point. Really good point. It's quite often, it's not necessarily the discipline of the sport itself that drives people to stay involved with it. It's something else. And this is one reason why I really encourage people a lot of the time to try new things, to try new sports, to go to new places, because it might be, I mean, for me, a great example is running. You know, I love running, but actually I'm not in love with running itself. I really enjoy to run in beautiful places, you know, with places where I typically have run during my lifetime, or when I've lived by the coast in the UK, you know, and even then when I've lived in cities, I've driven out of my way to go to national parks and places that are great for running. And yeah, now I'm here in the middle of Berlin, and I still do the same thing. I'll go out of my way to run somewhere really pleasant, and I'll hardly ever go out of my door and just run around the city, because that just doesn't do it for me. And I know that there's loads of people that play sports that kind of like the sport, but they're more in love with the camaraderie of the team environment, or, you know, the environment that they play, the element of being outdoors while they're doing it, or whatever it is. You know, there's lots of different factors that play in how much you enjoy a sport or you know, some kind of fitness discipline. So yeah, I'm really happy that you said that.
Yeah. And I think, especially now, I think in a lot of countries it's still down or something like. And then I think it's easy to do sport now with someone else, because it's limited with one person. Some countries you're not able to do it with another person. It's only by yourself, everything. So yeah, I noticed for myself that it was quite difficult to be able to do some sports. And with my colleagues at work, we have a little challenge that we made up. And it's not only sport that we do also other things. But there was one day that we made a sport activity, and it was like warming up and do some sit-ups. And we tried to do it like live, with talking to each other, and just make sure that you did it. And I love to do it that moment, because I was still in contact with other people. So I think those at the moments right now, you have to be more creative than normally. But yeah, we have tools, we have internet, we have our cell phones, we have laptops and everything. Use those things to maybe keep on going with your goals. If your goal is still doing some workouts, but you're not able to do it by yourself, maybe you can ask someone else to do it together, and then both of you can be more even more motivated to keep on going during lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the accountability factor is massive, isn't it? You know, I mean, that's one of the huge benefits of having a coach as a player, is that you've got that accountability, that additional responsibility to someone else to perform a certain way, and you know, that can easily translate to the general public trying to get in shape. You know, find a friend who's got similar goals to you, or you know, somebody who's got an interest in what you're doing, and just make yourselves accountable. I see a lot of these Facebook groups. I think they're booming at the moment. You know, people getting on board with these Facebook groups and just putting their own progress pictures up, just to add that level of accountability. So, right, this is where I'm at now. In 4 weeks, you know, I want to be, or this is how fast I'm running. I'm hoping to get this down, and it's great to get that support. You know, some of these groups are really, really supportive. But that's a really good point. Definitely having that bond with someone else, and that kind of, like I said, camaraderie between you and another person can make such a huge difference to your consistency in you know, striving to achieve your goals. That's awesome. So something else I really wanted to ask you about was kind of the belief factor, the self-belief. How I mean, I've got two questions, I guess. One, kind of how big an influence do you think the self-belief plays with your players, and what sort of stuff do you do that might be related to that, if that is something that you spend any time on?
Now, it's funny that we're going to talk about this, because my last course I had with a sports psychologist, who give us some information how he works. Yeah, we in Belgium and I think UK and everything also, like a bit of Europe, we have the self-development, and it's a goal on its own, to develop ourselves and getting better by yourself and performing better by ourselves. But in some cultures, it's not themselves. They see themselves only when they are in a group. So there, it's the group that have to perform. And I think there's a little bit difference between the self-development and also the importance of self-belief. Because some people only see themselves in a group, and it's not that's wrong. It's just their culture. So I think that's a little important thing to take with us. But when we are in the culture where self-development and everything is important, self-belief takes a big place in it. Because if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe that you're able to do things and to trust yourself, it's difficult to get even better. A tool that we see quite often, I think a lot of people use it, but not always in the right way. It's like self-talk. So a lot of athletes and other people also, we use self-talk. But the most important thing about self-talk is what you're saying. Does it helps you? Because there are people saying to themselves, what are you doing right now? And you're terrible, and you're the worst player at this moment that you can be. Okay, that's something you said. Does it helps you to perform better after you said it? Quite often, it's not. It's only for a little bit, a few people that it helps. And if it helps them, then it's positive self-talk. But quite often, for most of the people, it doesn't help themselves. So it's negative self-talk. And there's something very important to use: positive self-talk. Use self-talk that helps you to get back on track, or to get better, or to perform better at that moment. If it's not going well and you feel, okay, I'm not doing like I'm able to do, tell something to yourself that you know that works. And that takes also a lot of practice, because a lot of people think, okay, I go to the sport psychologist, I ask a tool, I give that self-talk, and then they think, okay, next game I will do some positive self-talk and it will work immediately. No. And like when you have to practice for your technique, for your sport, you also have to practice your mental tools. You have to practice them. When you're at your practice, when you're on your training, okay, use and try some self-talk. What helps you? And that can help to believe in yourself at that moment also. Because quite often it's talking positively to yourself that helps. And if you talk positive to yourself, it helps to believe in yourself also. Because if I say to myself, you're able to do this, you already did it, and I don't believe it myself, yeah, then it doesn't work neither. It's a bit like they work on each other, the self-belief and the self-talk. If it's positive words can help each other to get even better. So that's a tool that a lot of people use, and I think it's important that they use it on the right way. So that's a little thing. I think it's one of the most important things.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
I
agree with you, but it's nice to hear it coming from you, someone who knows more about it than me.
Yeah, I find it the most important thing, because I know that quite a lot of people do it wrong. If I have to be honest, I did it wrong myself too. That's why I became a sports psychologist. I don't know, but I was when I'm playing basketball and it's not going the way I want it to go, I can be really hard on myself. It's not on my teammates. I became really angry, and my teammates knew that, and he was angry on myself, but it didn't make me better later in the game. So especially since I'm studying sports psychology and I'm getting deeper into it, I try the tools myself and I notice a big of difference between it. So that's why I think it can really work. Just make sure that you use the good self-talk that you need, that works for you.
Yeah, and that's really key, isn't it? You know, you mentioned two things that I found interesting there. One was it doesn't work for most people, which implies, you know, it might be useful for some. I would absolutely agree with you. Like, I think it probably more than 95% of cases, it's probably not very useful, but you're always going to have the anomalies that actually that plays in their favor, getting super frustrated maybe in the middle of a game, as an example. That might actually be the thing that increases their performance in the end. And then the other thing is not just going through the motions of using that self-talk, but actually having the belief in it. If you don't have the belief in it, it's pointless, in my opinion, to just kind of, the words aren't magic words. You know, you can't say them. It's not like casting a spell.
No.
All your dreams come true. It's got to be that emotional connection with it. That breeds the result. And really interesting that you said it's one of the most important factors. And I guess probably for players particularly, because when you're so competitive, I think you tend to be much harder on yourself anyway. You know?
Yeah, true. I think they put the goal very high for themselves. And it's not really a problem always, but it is a problem when they're not able to get there anymore, and they're not able to do something else about than thinking about that goal. I had a little conversation this year, like a friend of mine plays basketball also on a higher level than me, and she was like, yeah, I'm always a perfectionist and it's my worst enemy. And I was like, at some moments it can be, because you cannot always expect everything doing everything perfect. But the fact that you are a perfectionist made you also that you achieved the goal at this moment, that you are at the point you are right now. So it's not always terrible to be a perfectionist. Sometimes it helps you. Help her get better and to perform better and to become a better athlete, and for her to be at the point she's standing right now. But now she has to learn, okay, I cannot perfect it anymore like I always want to do it. But how can I make sure that the perfectionist in me can help me to be there at the moments I need to be?
It's definitely about getting the balance, isn't it? Because striving for excellence, as you say, is what's got these players to the point that they're at now anyway. Striving for perfection, in my view, is largely futile. It's not. It doesn't really serve a purpose, because what is perfect anyway? You know, you can quantify something and say it's perfect, like a 10 out of 10 score obviously is a perfect score. But what's a perfect race? You know, what's a perfect game? You know, you can't really define these things specifically. It's too subjective. But all that really matters is that you're at a high enough standard. That's where you should be at. You know, so I think, like you say, the perfectionism thing. It's finding the balance between striving for excellence, but not trying so hard to reach perfect. I had someone last year.
And I think that balance.
Go on.
I just want to say that balance is the most important thing in so many things. It's like, you have to be believe in yourself and everything, but you don't have to believe too much in yourself. You have to be, be able to do it really, really well. you can't expect to do it always perfectly, even to reach the goal of perfect. So it's always like the balance about doing it and getting better, but also knowing that there's limits on everything. And so a little thing that I think is important to get in the back of our head.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes right back to what you were saying at the start about being realistic, being realistic with your goals. You don't want to endanger your own success by being demoralized that you're not achieving something that isn't achievable anyway. It doesn't make any sense. So, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Self-talk, I think it's really important. And I think sometimes people are put off a little bit by the idea of practicing it because it seems a little bit daft to kind of say to yourself that you can do this, and you have these sort of self-development coaches that give out these affirmation practices. People will quite often do affirmations first thing in the morning, like they'll wake up and say to themselves, I can do this, money flows to me, or I am an energetic person, and these kinds of things, and I think people can sort of think, it seems a bit daft, but what they don't realize is that they're doing affirmations anyway. We're always talking to ourselves, but it's better to be consciously doing positive affirmations than to subconsciously be doing negative ones, like telling yourself you're an idiot because you dropped something on the floor or forgot your keys or whatever it is. Every time we do that, that's a negative affirmation, and that's just consolidating the belief that you're not good at something, or you're stupid, or whatever it might be. And much better, I think, to focus on the positive ones when you're doing the negative ones anyway.
Yeah, true. And sometimes people are not. They say, I'm not good at it. Talking to myself, and it doesn't work for me because that's something I'm used to, and it feels awkward or it's wrong to talk to myself. And then sometimes we look for other tools, and sometimes it's just like their bottle of water, putting a picture on it that reminds you to keep on going, to believe in yourself, or that reminds you why you're doing this. It can be a lot of things, but sometimes just if the words don't help you, it may sometimes just be like a little picture or a quote that is written on the bottle of your on your bottle or something. It can help you too, because you look at it and then it reminds you without you have to tell it yourself. So it's, if words don't help you to tell it to yourself or something, maybe something to put out there that you just have to watch you can help you. So it's sometimes it's just like looking for other ways what can help you in the same way, but just give it yourself on a different sort.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's a lot to do with triggers, isn't it? All of our behaviors generally are associated with a trigger of some kind, and if the verbal trigger isn't working for you because you're a visual person, or you're more of an audio person, then it's important to think about what triggers might help you. And like you say, those visual aids can be great. Like my mum has been gradually working her way back down to the weight that she was when she was in her 20s, and she's got a picture of her in her 20s on the fridge, and that's a classic example. That's a reminder, because saying it to yourself and reminding yourself of your goals might remind you, but it doesn't cause that emotional connection. And this is one of the reasons I work a lot with my clients on visualizations. Visualize the goal, but really interacting with that visualization until you can get that emotional connection, that same emotional connection that you might get from listening to a song that was playing on a holiday you had, all those years ago. And we know that when that happens, all the emotions of that can suddenly come flooding back. So So yeah, whatever trigger you can find that gives you that emotional connection can be a massively useful tool, can't it?
True. And you're talking about visualization, and it's something we quite often use also in sport psychology. So, but we quite often make it even bigger with the term imagery, because it's not only trying to visualize it yourself. Sometimes it helps to close your eyes and try to remember the noise that you hear back then, or the smell. I don't know. There are some little videos on YouTube or everything, like trying to remember a lemon. It's like, yeah, okay, close your eyes, imagine that you have a lemon in front of you. How does it feel when you going over it? How does it smell when you take a little bite in it? How does it taste? So it's more than only seeing what it was, and that can help too, because, for example, some people have stress. I'm going to use the basketball just because it's easier for me to give the examples, but to do, you have to make that point to win the game. It can be a really stressful situation, and they know it perfectly how to do a free throw, because it's always the same distance of the goal. It's always the same routine. They probably do the ball as the same, how big it is. It stays the same, the weight, everything. So all those things are the same, but the stress makes it more difficult, and it helps to just imagine, okay, when I did it, for example, on practice, it was quiet. I imagine a quiet place where I just do my routine when it's easy. Or, for example, on practice, using the things and the triggers that you have on a game, the noise that comes on the game, people that are yelling and saying woo or something, and then trying to do your free throw with all that noise that you normally have on a game, but you don't have on a practice. So it can help you to imagine all those things, and so you get even with the noise and everything a good routine.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I really love that, and I'm a big fan of that. You know, I really encourage that exact same sort of thing with people that I work with, and I include it myself. You know, I really practice what I preach when it comes to this stuff. You know, I have my own visualizations of me, my future self, and I practice all that stuff that you just talked about there. You know, not just what does it look like, but how it feels to be in that skin. You know, just what can I see through those eyes? What sounds can I hear? How does that environment smell? All these things. So I think that's really, that's awesome. I'm really glad that you brought that up. We're definitely on the same wavelength with that one. So we're probably going to look at making the last few points that for today, because I know that you probably got lots more to get on with. What I did want to talk about was, because I know that you've got a lot of background of working with kids as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, what I wanted to ask you really was, how much of an influencing factor do you think psychology is at a young age of whether kind of children turn into healthy adults? Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I think, it's difficult to really, how do I say? Normally, just the regular psychology, we don't always have to use psychology on children. I would say just let them develop, and we will see where they get. But I think tools that are important to give them, it doesn't always have to be with a psychologist or everything, but it just can be with help of the parents, with coaches and all teachers. Is that like, children, they may have dreams. It's not a problem to have a big dream, like becoming a professional basketball player, or to become a professional swimmer, for example. Let them have the dream. We don't always have to break the dream and say no, it's not realistic. Let them have them, but then challenge them to get even better. Don't say always, oh, you're doing it perfectly, and the coach is always wrong. Sometimes a coach can be wrong, sometimes a referee or something can be wrong, but it's not that your child or the child will always be the perfect one. And I think that's a little mindset that we sometimes forget. We want to be there for them. We want to make sure that they feel well. But one of that part is learning how to deal with failure. Sometimes we have to fail to stand up and go further. And if children, when they don't learn that, it's difficult when they are an adult to handle with them because they don't have the tools to use when they fail. So I think those things are very important to let them realize and to learn them how to deal with it, because they will learn to deal with it. And if it's difficult, there are adults, there are teachers, parents, coaches who are available to help them to learn to deal with it. But if they are not learning it while they're young, it will be more difficult to learn it when they are adults. Because when we are children, that's the moment that we learn so many things to use ourselves. And the more things they learn themselves, then more often they will use it when they're adults, because they used it when they were children and it worked. So then they will use it again. And if it didn't work, they will try something else, or we can help them to try something else to handle with it. So it's like failure. You may have dreams. It's not a problem to have dreams and to work to those dreams, but don't make them the perfect ones. Don't think we are always perfect. The other side neither. Don't always say you're terrible. Sometimes it's just like, okay, that you did wrong and that you did good. Okay, if they're not good in the sport, just say maybe their motivation or their work attitude was really good. But give them something positive also. It's again that balance between positive things, but that helps them to learn dealing with failures.
Interesting, yeah. Interesting. Do you think there's much benefit on psychological health, particularly for children, to be involved in sports?
I know in Belgium, I don't know how it is in countries, there are some sport psychologists that work with children, but quite often they start around like 10 years, I think. So 10, 12 years, then they are getting older, they are getting more, they are more able to try something out also. They have more, attention and everything. So before the years of 10, it's more difficult. It can be sometimes during a little bit plays or everything, but we don't use it quite often in sport psychology. It's more from start 10, 12, that we start working more with children. Because before the age of 10, 12, children are still developing. So it's going to a sport psychologist, sometimes it can help, but I think sometimes you have to give the chance to the children to learn themselves and to develop. And when it's getting difficult, then we are there to help. And if something is going really wrong, then we can go help them. But first, let them try themselves, and don't give them too much tools already. They have so many things they have to learn. If we put even extra tools in it, it can be too much also. Children have to learn.
They're absorbing so much information already.
It is that, and we have to make sure that it's not too much neither, because otherwise maybe other things getting it's difficult maybe for other things then that they have to learn also. So we have to give them a bit of time. With us, with adults, we have our routines. We have our daily routines. We have our tools that we normally use, and when they're wrong, okay, we can see how we can help. Or if we don't have them, okay, we bring them. But first, let them find their tools and see if they work.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really key. I mean, obviously, it's always specific to each child and each person and each environment, isn't it? It's yeah, yeah. That's it's super interesting. I think for me, I wish that all kids could get involved in sports at a young age because I see the difference between people that come to me that have had no background in sort of sporting activity or exercise and those that have, and it's always a big difference. You know, those that have had that background and that experience with it, even if it's been years and years and years since they've been participating in sports and exercise regularly, always have a much easier time getting back into some sort of routine and seeing results from that. And they, again, it's kind of goes back into the sort of triggers, I guess. You know, you store all these memories of everything from when you're a child, even if you think you've forgotten. And once they get back into, you know, a sport again or, you know, exercise again, it's almost like they're remembering little tricks and things that got them excited about it in the first place and stuff like that. So, yeah, I personally, I feel like it's really important for people to try and have that involvement at a young age. Yeah. So, what was I going to ask you? Yeah. So that was it. So I talked a little bit about, you know, me practicing what I preach. I was going to ask you, because obviously you are an athlete as well. You've been an athlete all your life. What kind of things have you taken away from your knowledge of psychology and your, you know, professional skills and applied to your own life that has made the biggest difference with you sort of staying motivated towards your own goals and being involved in sport or even in general, you know, to other aspects of your life? What kind of things?
At basketball, because I still play basketball, it's like the visualization, the imaginary that I use quite often right now for trying it out myself, because it's easy to say, okay, visualize how to do it, but it's not that easy to do it by yourself. So I think it's important that I do it myself to know how difficult it is when I try to teach someone to do it. So yeah, that's one thing I quite often use right now. And also the self-talk, like I already said, was something, the positive self-talk for me is like a big life changer in my basketball play. So those two things. And then I think with when people get injured, the knowledge that I have out of sports psychology, I take with people that I pass by in my club. So I saw two people that were out for a long time, and that's why I thought it was so important for other people to know that the good goal setting and being realistic is so important, because I saw that it went wrong with someone I knew. And it was too bad, because she was a younger basketball player 2 years ago. She was really good at that age. She was youth, and then she got something on her knee. Operation wasn't able yet at that moment because she was still growing and everything. So she had to wait 2 years to get an operation.
Wow.
So she was out of the game 2 years. She came back at that moment. She's 2 years older, playing also with adults, and she expects to be also the better girl on the court because she was back then. And
Yeah.
I don't feel good, she said, because I'm not able to do what I want to do. I know what to do, but I'm not able to. And she was so disappointed that our motivation, it was totally away. So, and she quit. She doesn't play anymore. And that's why I think, that is so important. So it's not something I had to use luckily for myself, being realistic and goal setting while you're injured. But I think it's really, really important, because I saw it going wrong with a girl that I think is really a shame, because I still believe that if we were able to get her realistic goals and always going a higher goal, a level every time, little steps, that she would be able to get there again. But Yeah, because everyone wanted it too fast, or the motivation was up, she didn't, and she quit. So I don't use it myself, but I push it to everyone I know, like, know how important it is.
Yeah.
So those are, yeah, I think little things that I use myself. And another thing that I find interesting during my study was the I know a lot of people are going to get thinking weird when I say the word, but mindfulness. The word himself, people think like, yeah, no, that's nothing for me. But it's not really the whole package of mindfulness. But sometimes just knowing your body, getting the knowledge of your body, just getting calm, not thinking anything at all. For some people, it can be really useful. But if I say the word mindfulness to athletes, I think they're going to jump right up and go out of the office just because of the word. Because a lot of people think mindfulness, no, that's nothing for me. That's really like
super spiritual.
So I don't use the word. Yeah. So I don't use the word, but I'm saying like, yeah, okay, to relax. It are relaxation exercises. The relaxation exercises that they use in mindfulness can help sometimes people to get just relaxed at home or something, or even be relaxed before the game. Just breathing exercises. Those things they use in mindfulness, but we as sport psychologists, we use them also. The breathing exercise, relaxation exercises. So it's really helpful. But I think quite often when they hear the word mindfulness with exercises together, athletes run away. So I think if you hear the word, wait a second and hear what the person wants to say or wants to do with you. If it's like a relaxation exercise, give it a try. Some people will find it helpful, others not, but at least maybe it can be good to just give it a try and to see for yourself.
Yeah, it's fun. It is a funny one, and I think one of the problems is that these terms have been used within this very kind of sort of hippie-ish, sort of spiritual circles for so long that they just carry all the associations with that, and people who aren't that kind of way inclined immediately sort of deflect it when you use those same terms. I try to disguise it as contemplation. So that's kind of the terminology that I use, and I encourage everyone I work with to take some period of the day to do nothing at all other than just kind of be internal for 5 to 10 minutes, even not listening to music, just a chance for the brain to organize what's going on in there, or not the brain, but the mind, the mind to organize what's going on in there. And nobody who has done that has ever come back and said to me, it didn't work, I didn't feel the benefit. It's always positive. I do it every morning. Before I do anything, it's always some kind of breath work and some kind of contemplative time, whether that's actually kind of going deep enough to meditate, or if it's just sitting and just focusing on one thing, at a time. But I really encourage it. And I know what you mean. People hear the words meditation or mindfulness and they're like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not that kind of person, and it's interesting. There was, you probably know about this. You might even have studied it potentially, but there was a professor, can't remember his name. I think it's Garfield, the surname. And anyway, I was reading about his work, and he's doing a lot of research on high performers, which is mostly elite level athletes and other people that would class as sort of high performers. And his studies found that 95% of high performers are visualizers. they do some kind of visualization practice. You know, I think visualization and meditation or mindfulness very much go kind of hand in hand. Probably if you're doing one, you're doing some type of the other. And yeah, me and my brother always joke that the British military invented mindfulness, because there's a strategy where for infantry that are moving through across ground, that are coming into a new area where they're going to set up a camp, they'll do what's called a soak period, sorry. So before you move into the final checkpoint where you're planning to make the camp, everybody just goes to the ground and is just completely quiet for 5 minutes. And it's mindfulness, you know, it's just tuning into the environment, doing nothing, listening, being aware of what's going on. And that's what gives you that opportunity for mental clarity, to then move into that, you know, that new environment and be sure that you know what's going on, be sure that you can, you know, that it's safe and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's awesome. So this last question is probably going to tie very much into the answer that you gave for the last one. But what's the kind of advice? I try to make everything relatable to people that might be watching at home that aren't necessarily athletes, but that are on a fitness journey. So, you know, for someone who's either just about to start some kind of journey to get into sport or to get back into shape, or for somebody who's been on one for some time and, you know, might be struggling with the issues that we talked about, like motivation and stuff, you know, what would be the kind of key take-home things that an everyday person can implement in their lives that might make that fitness journey a bit easier for them?
I think first, something we discussed also already, it's like, yeah, look for something that works for you. So is it, doing a workout by yourself, or do you prefer it with someone else? So look for something that motivates you and helps you to do it. And at the other side, it's also like sometimes you just have to try it before you can see if it's something for you or not. And not only once, try it a few times. And if it doesn't work after it, or it isn't something that works for you, not a problem. And you can search for something else. But don't say after 5 minutes, okay, it's not something for me and I quit. Because after 5 minutes, you don't really know if it's something that works for you. Give it a chance. So, I think those two things are very important. So look for something that you think can be something for you with someone else, by your own. So, and try it. Set your goals. What are your goals? Write them somewhere down. Take a picture that reminds you on them. Take a quote, maybe a quote that reminds you of your goal. And that's like, okay, that's my goal when I see that quote or when I say that quote. So it keeps you motivated. It keeps you reminding why you're doing it.
Awesome. So find something that you enjoy, that motivates you. Be open-minded to new things before you write them off, and then find something that has that emotional connection to your goals to kind of keep you on track. That's awesome. That's brilliant. I think that's a really great place to finish up. Thank you so much for coming on. I found it really interesting, and I could ask you loads more questions. So I'm sure everyone else has. Is there anything you want to? Any words you want to part with us on, or you good?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm happy that I could talk a bit about psychology, and I hope a lot of people don't see it as a taboo anymore and are open for it. So if they need help or someone's help, or they have the feeling that it can help them to have someone to think about it with them together, don't be afraid. You're just people also, and we don't think you're crazy because you come to us. So, yeah.
Brilliant. All right, great. Thanks so much, Dorien. I'll say goodbye to you there. Have an awesome day. Thank you again.
You too. Bye.